Welcome to the High Ground Podcast. I'm Stevie W.
And Callum,
Okay, we've been planning this for some time, doing a ROBOCOP one.
we have, and I've been looking forward to it.
So today, yeah, this is going to be good. I actually watched the director's cut for this,
Good
which
man.
from the Arrow box set, which is absolutely fantastic.
Oh,
And
it's the best. It's the best release you can get out there, honestly.
so here we are. Is ROBOCOP the ultimate 1980s movie?
Oh, discuss.
I'm gonna go. I'm going with it is, and I'm just going just for the fact that alone. This is a point. I mean, where studios. This is prior to now where everything is. I mean, I know it was corporate at the time, but studios would literally release movies, to a smaller kind of audience, where it wasn't all
Yeah,
about you've got to make all the money and have a big opening, and then you could gain the secondary market. And then for the sequels is when you start worrying about the bringing in the big money. This was and putting out stuff that was in the UK 18 certificate with a lot of violence, which had as well a more of a young a teenager and children's themes, because they knew that on the secondary market, on the home video market, that children were going to watch these things, and for that alone, it's you know it is one of the ultimate 80s movies because it was a film which was meant for the big screen but also meant for the home video market.
yeah. And I mean, the year itself lends itself to like the youth, I think, because you've got the Lost Boys, Lethal Weapon. I always thought of Lethal Weapon as a, I always loved it more as a kid. No, I don't not love it now. I mean, like it was more, I always action is always appealing to kids, isn't it? So I mean, you've got the start of Lethal Weapon, possibly the greatest action franchise. You've got Living Daylights, Elm Street 3. All the cool sort of, even the adult make the kids films like the Elm Street series was starting to go that way, wasn't it?
Oh
And
yes.
I think '87 for me is like the end of the '80s essentially. I don't know why I feel that, but it feels like everything. It's where all the original films stopped and the sequels start coming out the years later.
It, I do see your point with the films that you've just mentioned. It is all the MTV movies. I mean, even Lost Boys could be the argument. We look at the soundtrack to Lost Boys. They are the Elm Street movie. Sorry, they are the MTV movies. They are for the
Yeah,
MTV
100%.
generation. And they all had kick-ass soundtrack. I mean, with the exception of well, RoboCop's got a great classical score. You've got and Lethal Weapon's got a good. It's got a great score. But the other, Lost Boys, Elm Street, uh, you know, uh, all have typical 80s rocking soundtracks.
Yeah,
They do. And but RoboCop with its, it's got that mix of violence and explosions. I mean, I'm sorry, but these explosions have storylines, and that puts Michael Bay to shame. Rather than writing a film around an explosion, it's like, oh, we're sticking an explosion that actually helps the plot of the movie. And
or cutting from an explosion to a pair of tits
yeah, I'd buy
is
that
what
for a
Michael Bay
dollar.
does the best.
They actually no, they don't do that now. But in the what's it? You got I'd buy for that for a dollar guy. But then again, uh, if you look, there's a bit where one of the officers, just as Murphy's going into the precinct and about to get suited up in his body armor,
Oh yeah,
there's a woman getting changed in there, and her tits are just a matter of fact rather than look, there's his hair tits on the screen.
yeah. That's the Verhoeven thing, isn't it? He's always said he's never been that uncomfortable around nudity, being European. So, and if you go from that to the shower scene in Starship Troopers,
Yeah.
he's never had a problem with nudity,
Well,
as
showgirls.
a titillation.
Look at showgirls though.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I forgot about that. Obviously, I can't. I always forget about that when I discuss him. I don't know why. But
I think a lot of people involved with that film would like to forget about it.
yeah,
Although it has got a real
although it is due,
cultural.
a special edition release, I think.
Yeah. That would be an interesting one.
But I get what you mean. Like the sort of RoboCop does feel like it feels like, well, we're arguing, aren't we, that it's the 80s film, but I think you can. There's that 80s vibe that runs through it. But I mean, watching it again, like, I mean, I've seen it so many times, and I'm sure you have. Like, it doesn't feel dated. Like, there's some of it a little bit sort of, like obviously the TV screens and stuff. The technology I never really count because you can't predict how it's going to change. But like the mass media stuff and the advertisements in the middle of the action, that's still genius today, I think. And it just seems so ham-fisted and forced in the remake.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that get me is is like the OCP and anagram of cop. The 6000 sucks, SUX,
Yeah.
and I thought it's just this little.
I never realised that. OCP, yeah, that's clever.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant. The TV shows which you got are, I can't remember what the real name is, but yeah, I'd buy that for $1. TJ Laser and Media Break. Media Break, is the exposition of where it's all going, and it's brilliant. And then you got the advertisements for the hearts.
Yeah.
And the bits on the Media Break about the presidents being on the space platform, the misfiring of a laser, stuff like that.
And the board game called Nuke Em.
Yeah. It breaks up. I mean, it does break it up like you watch. I mean, bear in mind this is a cinema release.
Yeah.
And to have little things like that breaks it up like little adverts, it's unique. Oh, it's not unique, but you know what I mean for the genre. If
and it's a really clever way of just sort of, not dumping exposition, but giving you exposition in another way that keeps you invested instead of, because when you do turn on the telly, you do see things about, like at the beginning when they talk about Officer Fredrickson getting shot by Count Bodica. You do see things like that, and it's like, oh, police officer's just been shot and killed and whatever. And then it morphs into like the film itself, and I think that's a really good sort of way to, rather than those typical science fiction openings where it's like it is the year 2130 or whatever, like they're so like cliched.
Humans are on an offshore colony.
Yeah.
Everyone came back, but we love.
Or Judge Dredd in the third millennium, like
Is this the 95 Judge Dredd or the Carl Urban Judge Dredd?
Yeah, I mean, I remember the narration was James L. Jones, if I'm not mistaken.
Who?
But that read the narration for the original Judge Dredd at the start.
I
but
I saw it at the cinema.
But I mean, that's my point. Like, Judge Dredd's a really forgettable sort of mid-90s science fiction film, whereas you don't have that corny voiceover narration in RoboCop. It's all the corporate stuff, which is by nature corny. I mean, we work for a big corporation, and a lot of their slogans are sort of cringeworthy, aren't they? Oh. So in that sense, it's not the film being cringe; it's being deliberately sort of satirical.
The thing is, there's a lot of this. The whole satire is lost on children. It would be. When I was watching I remember seeing posters for RoboCop, and just wanting to see the film. So when it was available on video, I got to see the film, and it was. I mean, I wasn't into horror at that age when I watched RoboCop, and the version we had was not as gruesome as the one we got now through the director's cut. But it was the whole idea of a man being turned into a robot, a cyborg, and then going out and shooting people and being the big robotic hero, and that is so appealing.
That's cool.
It is, and it's, and you got the adults are watching it for this, and the gore when Emil gets the toxic waste.
Toxic man.
Gross.
So me and my friend used to call him.
Oh, that is. Apparently, he ended up in ER. My fiance likes
He did,
ER,
yeah.
and I'm like, oh,
So did Michael Ironside, who's also used by Verhoeven quite a bit.
wow. He's in ER as well. Jesus.
Yeah, he's in the first season, I think. But not. He's like a guest star sort of thing.
Ah.
He's like one of the doctors that sort of reappears now. Everyone's been in ER at some point,
Including George Clooney.
including George Clooney. Yeah.
I know what's her name as well, Ming Na Wen.
Yeah. Quentin Tarantino's directed an episode as
Yeah.
well.
Well, yeah, when the boss says about you have to watch ER or something because Ming Na Wen's in it, I was like, I just go and watch. I watch her in Street Fighter, but you know what? I tell you what I love, and because today, if you look at the RoboCop remake, yeah, you know what really, really annoyed me, and this is that when you got that scene where Murphy wants to know what is the suit, and you actually see just the head and the heart and the hand.
I didn't like that.
I thought that was
too much.
Yeah, I like the whole idea of not knowing how much was RoboCop, and I thought that was too in your face because when you first introduced to RoboCop, Murphy as RoboCop, you see him being pieced together through his eyes from the operating table. You don't actually see. All you see is the mechanics around him and the people all around him.
Yeah, subjective.
Then you see.
Yeah.
Then you see him on this TV screen as he's going past, as he's entering the police precinct. So it takes a while before you get the full reveal in the suit. And whereas now they would literally just throw it all out there and say, there you are, like, there he is, this is what he looks like, because you want everybody to see what he looks like. Just pay them money to go to cinema.
Isn't he essentially like a head and like lungs and a heart and stuff in the remake?
He is. That's
when
all he is.
When it holds the camera back.
Yeah. That's all he is. And I thought it was disgusting. Not gory, gross, but I just thought that was kind of. Definitely, I don't know if the word voyeuristic's the word, but it's sort of like showing corporations showing what it could do to someone.
Yeah, I mean, ironic that it comes in bloodless PG-13 version of RoboCop. Yeah. Most disturbing sort of image. I mean, I remember having like discussions in the school playground and with like everyone else that's seen it. Like they like, well, like what is it like underneath the suit? Like what's left of him? And we sit there and sort of think of it in our imagination what would be left. And I had my own theory. And then when I saw that, I was kind of like, because I didn't think the remake's that bad up to that point. It's kind of serviceable. Like Joel Kinnaman's not a bad actor at all, and like, it was okay. Like, but when that happened, it just took me out of it.
Yeah, I do agree because it was very jolting. It was, and because you don't. I mean, to me, RoboCop was. I always thought, the exception of the arms, because they lose the arms. He was essentially his upper torso. But that was.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I mean, I think that's sort of in the remake. He's got an arm left, hasn't he? A human arm. I think that sort of nod to the fact that in the original they do say lose the arm.
It's his hand. It's just one of his hands.
Yeah, is it his hand? Is it?
It's one of his hands. But why would they say one hand just to? It made me illogical.
I don't know. It feels like something that would come more out of the RoboCop 3 universe, doesn't it, than anything else?
Oh, that's. But yeah, definitely. How come, I know history repeats itself. When you look at RoboCop 3, they went right back to the punk movement in terms of for the villains. They did the splatterpunks, are they?
Yeah, that's it. The splatterpunks.
And that's the thing that was very Batman. I've always thought that was very 60s Batman when they call themselves splatterpunks. And I don't think they would know what word do.
Yeah, I get this whole thing that thinks. Like, it is an 80s science fiction thing as well. Like, why do they think punk's are futuristic? I don't get it.
Because they worked for Mad Max.
But, yeah, I guess.
But you look at what they're wearing, it's actually... the clothing and everything, it does screams mid to late 80s, especially with the hairs. The hair, the styles, that's what got me. But I know history repeats itself, but not
as
that
well.
much. Pardon?
Sorry, no, Karen.
I was just saying about how history repeats itself.
Yeah.
And that big hairspray element of the 80s is one thing I don't think we'd want to have back. And you look at Lewis's hair,
Yeah.
So that kind
Yeah,
of
she
puts it
gets
directly.
short head, doesn't she? And it's just, and you have to kind of remember, I suppose, that RoboCop 3 was actually made in 89 to 90,
Yeah.
and it sat on the shelf for 2 years because of Orion going bust. So I suppose it technically is a cusp of the 80s film, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really. But yeah, I don't like that whole puppet thing. It annoys me. I like it in Mad Max because it's sort of like that's their world and they play with that perfectly. But yeah, it doesn't seem to fit RoboCop very well. I mean, even the first one, that you see criminals in it, they just look like criminals,
Yeah.
like normal, don't they?
Yeah.
Like the two guys that try to assault that woman
Yeah.
and he shoots the guy in the nuts. They just look like thugs, don't they? They don't look like future punks.
No. Leon, Clarence's gang just are street they just look. They're wearing stuff you could literally pull off a shelf today.
Yeah, they look like you might see them today, sort of somewhere, don't they? But I think as well, if we're on definitive 80s stuff, I think Clarence Boddicker is one of my favorite 80s villains. He used to scare the shit out of me when I was a kid.
I can see that because he's ruthless, and when Murphy goes and pulls the files up, and he's got all of the names.
Yeah.
So he's a badass.
Yeah, and I think the dichotomy as well, like between apparently Kurtwood Smith's like the nicest guy ever.
Yeah.
And these like people that are evil, but like they're all nice in real life, and it's so jarring.
But I've always found that can be a good thing, especially if you're going to meet if you're meeting these people.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't watch Game of Thrones, but I've been told that David Bradley's character is apparently completely evil.
Yeah.
And yet he's genuinely one of the nicest celebrities I've met. So
well, he sort of plays those gruff, like no nonsense characters, doesn't he?
But if you can play good, you can play. If you can play evil, you can play good.
Yeah, I mean Ray Fiennes is
the
granddaddy of that, isn't he?
Oh yes. You look at
I mean, even someone like Gary Oldman to an extent, he can equally play. There's no sort of alignment that I associate with him with good and evil and his characters. He can either play one or the other just as good.
That's so true, because if you look at him as Commissioner Gordon, he's got a real heart as Gordon and a Sirius Black. You wouldn't think it's the same person.
Ironically, he's in the remake, isn't he?
Yeah. I forgot about that. I think he'd like to as well. Paycheck movie.
2 Batman references in that film.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because you've got Michael Keaton. Oh,
yeah.
Here's one for you. Right. When they go into the nightclub in RoboCop.
In the original.
In the original RoboCop, yeah.
Yeah.
Now you've got, because it's when Robo's going after Leon. Is going after Leon Nash, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, in Terminator, now you've got the bad guy being chased by the cyborg good guy. Terminator. You got the Terminator going into a nightclub, stalking the heroine, and I thought that was kind of an interesting twist on it.
Yeah, it's got to be a reference, hasn't it? Because it can look, I think James Cameron called it tech noir, didn't he?
Yeah, that's the name
of the club as well, isn't it? That sort of grimy, Blade Runner-y sort of future-y look. Yeah, definitely, yeah, I think so. I mean, interesting in Blade Runner, the screenwriters, Ed Neumeyer and Michael Miner, Ed Neumeyer got the idea for RoboCop because he worked as a stagehand on Blade Runner.
Nice.
And he didn't, he says in one of the documentaries about it, that people saying, oh, I didn't realize you worked on Blade Runner, and he said, yeah, I was like a stagehand, like a runner, but I didn't have a clue what this film was about. He says, one of the production assistants described to me, it's about a cop hunting robots in the future, and that's like the lightning moment where RoboCop came sort of not fully formed, but the idea of a robot cop in the future. And then it was Michael Miner that came up with the idea of, he had a script called Super Cop, about a cop who's injured and he's sort of becomes a donor, he's cyborg, and then they amalgamated together. So Blade Runner inspired RoboCop. There you go.
No, that is, because Blade Runner is one of our favourite movies.
Oh yeah.
And to have that go, inspired. But then again, you also look at Star Wars inspired the used universe of Star Wars inspired Ridley Scott to do Alien. If I'm right.
Yeah.
So it's,
when
you take something and you turn it into your own, yes, that's brilliant. You know what? Orion Pictures. That to me, when you see the Orion logos, that is 80s. That is 90s.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, what was it? Terminator, Silence of the Lambs is one of the last films I think they did. Just seeing the sort of the stars and then the O form. Yeah, I just love that. That and Karolko.
Yeah, Karolko, who did. They did Cliffhanger.
Yep, Terminator 2.
Yeah, and which is the one that did the Cutthroat Island that was put out of business? Is that Orion or Karolko?
Oh, was that not canon?
No.
No, was it not canon? No.
It was one of them.
Might have been. Yeah, it was Orion. Yeah, that was what bankrupted them. Yeah. I'm sure it was.
You look at the casting. You've got Dan O'Herlihy. He's a 80s actor.
Halloween 3 fame.
Yeah, and what was it? Ronnie Cox from, if I'm right, Beverly Hills Cop.
Yeah, Total Recall.
You got Miguel Ferrer. I know he's mainly known for RoboCop.
Yeah, that's why I was remembering from.
Isn't he, if I'm right, George Clooney's cousin?
Yeah, I think he's Rosemary Clooney's son, who is George Clooney's auntie.
And he's just friends with Carrie Fisher.
Yeah, I mean, I think his dad was. I'm not sure if it was Mel Ferrer. He's a famous Mexican actor. Might be. I can't remember.
It's Jose Ferrer.
Was it Jose? Sorry, Mel Ferrer's a separate actor. That on a little tangent though, like, the character he plays, Bob Morton. Yeah. I always used to think, as a kid, I was like, he's the good guy, sort of corporate guy in it that you can relate to. The one that wants RoboCop to succeed in that. But he's still a selfish sort of, Reaganite, bastard, and who does drugs and screws women and stuff. So like, no one's really truly good apart from the cops in this movie, really, are they?
No, and no, he's got one of the best lines. Bitches leave. Just before he's about to get killed by Clarence, and Clarence says, that, and he's with prostitutes doing coke. You just know that, you're going to die. But he's the one who orchestrates the cops being moved around so that they can get, after they've done the profiling, so that you've got Murphy sent to an area where he's likely to get killed.
Yeah.
And so he is. Good has to survive. Bad has to be punished. So they do. They all get punished.
When I was a kid, I don't think, I sort of used to make hierarchies of bad guys, didn't you? And I thought like Dick Jones was the guy at the top that was like the major asshole. Yeah. So I just thought, because Bob was opposing him, I used to think, yeah, go on, Bob. Like the bathroom scene, where they sort of confront each other. I used to know that word for word.
I remember, because I was a bit older than you when it came out, and I was like, oh God, you weren't even born when RoboCop came out.
No, I wasn't. It did come out in February of '88 in the UK, but I wasn't born until May, so I kind of cheat and say it is my year.
I remember, if '88, I'd have been 13. Jesus.
So not old enough to see it.
No. Not by a long shot.
I would love to see it in the theatres.
Oh, that would be brilliant. That would be brilliant. It has that scope for it, but with the right audience, you'd have to see it with a.
Yeah.
And it's got that grimy feel, like, to the film. So that's another reason why it's 80s. But it's, I mean, if I'm right, if I read the other day, I mean, the budget is $13 million, if I'm right.
Oh, same as Star Wars.
Yeah, 13 million estimated budget, and it's cumulative worldwide gross of 53 million. Actually, no, but it's kind of funny. It says that's the same as the American one, but it's got to be more better than that. But it just in the States alone, it made
two or three, maybe.
Pardon?
I'm sure it was about 200 or 300 million. It made like eventually, after it was all finished and through video rental stuff as well.
Yeah.
Because they made. I think these are the sort of films as well. This is probably for another podcast as well, but they relied so much on their video afterwards. To make the money, and sometimes, Blade Runner, The Thing, things like that, they make more money on video than they did in the theatres, which is something you couldn't do now, really.
No, because if it's small, it goes straight to streaming. But
yeah.
This was the thing back in the 80s, is that, and I don't know if I've said it on a podcast before, but in the 80s, with movies, especially ones of the science fiction and horror genre, mainly horror, you would get a film out there that was small. Then you'd make a sequel. Then it would gain its audience on home video. Then more people would go to the cinema for the sequel. So you get about 2 sequels, 3 sequels in, and then you get a slump. Instead of stopping production, you make another one so you can get yourself back on top. And that was a very 80s thing, is studios would throw money at product and keep the franchise going to make more and more money, and if there was a flop, they'd get another one out to keep the name fresh in your mind. Nowadays, you get to the second one and it's not made as much money as the first one. They scrap all their plans because they won't
cancel the whole TV series.
Yeah, because if it doesn't make money,
it's kind of like. I know exactly. Yeah, you're exactly right. Like it's mainly with like the big boys like Freddie, Jason, Michael, wasn't it? They were the ones that kept going on and on and on until it got to the point where there was kind of a fatigue in the late 80s, early 90s when these sequels were starting to get into like double figures, and diminishing returns meant that all they were doing was covering the budget of the movie they made the last time. So I think like. Yeah, it's weird that RoboCop only got 2 sequels, but I think it had been sort of done to death by the third one. I mean, if digressing back to earlier, I think the only film I can think of this century, not this century, sorry, this decade or last decade, where the film made more money and was more popular on home media was Dredd. I'm pretty sure that made a lot more money on Blu-ray than it did in the theatres. That's the only thing I can think of that done it recently, which shows you just how different everything is now.
Yeah, but the studios still won't have the confidence to actually
greenlight sequels. I mean, that would be unthinkable in the 80s, wouldn't it?
Yeah, if you're like, we've made our money, we can just throw it out there because we want to get people.
But if you made $1 million more than your budget, it was profit, wasn't it?
Yeah. And it's good to have something you can sell, you can make merch for.
Yeah.
Because
exactly. Because
all these RoboCop toys and all these horror figures and crap is being sold to kids. I remember they had these. They did RoboCop toys. They did Marvel children's RoboCop comic books at the same time as RoboCop and RoboCop 2 came out.
Yeah.
I know it's when RoboCop
video games.
Came out. Yeah. This was not like the 18 certificate video games or 15. I don't know how games are rated.
They're all sort of games are sort of interactive movies now a lot of the time. Where they're accepting that games are their own sort of storytelling medium now. Whereas back then they were literally cash grabs. You stuck something in an arcade. Like arcade games were hard because they wanted your quarters and your coins, not because they wanted to make a decent game.
And you just literally, I've got Bill and Ted on Game Boy, which has got no relation to the game, barely any relation to the films. And I got the Lethal Weapon game on Super Nintendo, which is a side scroller which bears no relation to the film, but they just planted the names on.
None of them really did.
No.
Just and is that an extension to the second part of this argument? Is that why RoboCop is definitive for the 80s as well, do you think, because of how much they drove the merchandise as well? As if it was a normal action film for,
It's a children's film, yeah.
Yeah, I can't. We've had this many conversations so many times that I think you understand it a bit more than me, but I cannot fathom how this and horror film were marketed. That they were 18 certificates. Some of them were like, video nasties and stuff like that. And yet they made lunch boxes, they made toys, they made posters. It really baffles me that sort of confusion, marketing wise, happened. Again, that would never happen today, would it?
Fangoria magazine.
Yeah, I suppose, yeah.
For a start, okay, we've got Fangoria. We've got the fact that you could literally go into video shops. Video shops would have posters. Listen, I'd love as a kid going around video shops, looking at the posters in the windows, and then going in and looking at the artwork on the. I wasn't a horror fan, but the artwork was absolutely effing brilliant. Pardon my language.
Yeah.
But you'd go and you'd look at the artwork, and then you'd see it, and you'd want to get it. And then you'd see sort of magazines like Fangoria, which you'd go to like specialist shops like what you define as your Forbidden Planet now, which would my local ones were Final Frontier and Another World. You'd go in there and you'd pick up copies of Fangoria with all these, and this aren't adult magazines. This is magazines that are aimed at teenagers and younger.
Yeah.
And you could literally just walk in and have all these horror characters and have RoboCop and the like all on the cover, and people are appealing to that market. So kids would see all this stuff, they'd go home and get their parents to rent these films, and they'd watch these films because at the end of they were being consumed by not by the parents, because I mean a lot of parents are supposed to be going just to get it from keep them quiet, and it was the norm. It was the norm because they knew. It's like I got into C18 certificates. Nowadays you need ID for it for stuff if you look remotely underage. And at the time when I was watching the 18 certificates, because I started watching them when I was 14. They knew I was underage, but they let me in, and I got a story where I went to see one film, and they turned me back, so I went back. I was going to go until I got in. So I did on the second attempt, but it made no difference if I didn't see it at the cinema. I was getting it as soon as I'd have waited the 6, 7, 8 months until it comes out on video, and I was going to go and get it on video. Because it was about making money.
The amount of time you used to have, people don't even know of some generation. There's some parts of how long we used to wait home video. Like the same time. I used to call it pregnant because it was like you have to wait for a child before you could watch something on video.
I've got a bit of an issue with the speaker here. Give me 2 seconds. Let me just.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we need. Speak now. See if we can get it.
Yeah. Can you? Yeah.
No, this is cables. It's been a bit funny. So give me 1 second. Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, say again, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, no, I was saying kids nowadays don't even know what it's like to wait like that long for a film to come out on home media. I used to call it pregnancy because you could have a child by the time a film you'd seen in the cinema comes out on video.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's I like that quote.
And so I used to call it that in my head. And I used to just think, why does it take so long? But there's so much of it. You have digital stuff now, and it goes to Blu-ray. Almost 2 months later, sometimes 3 months.
I mean, when you look at Star Wars was out in late December, The Rise of Skywalker, and it was already on. It was already on Disney Plus by the start of May.
Yeah.
Less than 5 months, that is. So that's it's faster turnaround so that the studios can get whatever else is next out. They are. So it's crazy. But yeah. So it's yeah. So
I think, like, can you remember the first time you ever watched RoboCop?
I can't remember the first time, but I know as soon as it came out on video.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't even video for me. I think it was like my dad taped it, saying like, "Oh, this is a good film, son." And so I probably saw a massively cut version. And then when I did see it on video, I remember getting it. My dad got it on proper VHS, and when there's just scenes I was like, I've not seen this before. Or like, the scene at the end of a meal.
Yeah.
And I just thought, what is this? This wasn't in it. Like,
I remember renting it on video because I wanted it. Because
yeah.
there was a magazine from Right, it was called Video World or something.
Oh yeah, I
And it was
remember
just
that.
nothing but videos, and so yeah, it's the yeah. Sorry, it was you literally you'd see these films, and it'd be literally we had B movies in these magazines, and you just want to see them, and then you say, can you get this one when you get the video shop? Because bearing in mind, video shops had more crap than they have on Netflix.
Yeah,
They
that's right.
literally
Yeah.
get loads of B movies in, and it was superb, and that's what I loved about the '80s. And RoboCop fitted in perfectly. It was like a legend amongst all these movies because it wasn't. I mean, like it took. I think it was 88, was it, or 86 that E.T. came out, and that was in '82. I think
Yeah. Like it waited, isn't it, or something?
yeah, I think 88 because I think 86 was Star Wars, was Jedi. 86 was Jedi and Lights of Back to the Future and Indiana Jones and Temple
Yeah.
of Doom. So you had to have these big waves because they would keep releasing them to the other markets. So
Yeah, I mean, I assume they came out on Laserdisc at some point as well before DVD.
that was more American. I know the only place
But yeah,
there's a
I
place in
think it was
Leicester.
like big in Japan as well, wasn't it?
RoboCop or Laserdisc.
Laserdisc. Well, RoboCop as well. I mean, I think Asia was some of its biggest takings in the box office. I mean, because it's like at the risk of sounding stereotypical, they do like their robots and cyborg stuff, don't they? Futuristic things.
Nothing wrong with that.
No, there isn't at all. No, but I think in a way that's what contributes to that sort of 80s mentality with RoboCop. Right? It's more of an amalgamation of everything about the decade that was cool, rather than a separate. I mean, it's about a robot, a cop, in the future. That's like three things together that might be one thing in another movie.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that contributed as well to how it still feels quite fresh today. I've said it already, but it does.
That's true. What's the gore in it though? You would not get away with
No.
modern day cinema, or even up to the '90s when they were starting to dumb it down for the actual younger audience. When they, from RoboCop 2, they were going for, that was starting to turn to the teenager audience. And when I say teenager, I mean the teenage audience that they wanted to get into the cinemas when, because when the box office became more important than the final take.
Yeah.
Because it's the prestige, and you look at now, it's mainly prestige movies that are coming out of the cinemas, the ones that they can try and say that the studio can say we've got the $100 million opening weekend and shit like that. Whereas, back then it was all about we'll get it out there, then we'll make our money.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
it's gruesome.
even what was I going to say now? The gore. Something about the gore. You go ahead. I'm trying to think.
It's horrific. I mean, the bit where they shoot, ning, 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 ning,
Oh yeah.
with a hand.
Like he's so disturbing, isn't he?
Yeah.
Like, how much he enjoys it all. Can you fly, Bobby, as well?
Oh, that is the ending
Chuck a
with.
few black lines.
And the bit where you see, Because you know RoboCop's a badass, and the bit where he's going about to go through the files, and he gets stopped by that nerdy cop, and he gets this spike out, and you think he's going to spike the cop.
Oh yeah.
But they end up spiking Clarence at the end. Sorry, spoiler. Why are you listening if you
Yeah.
haven't seen the film? So, yeah, but he spikes Clarence in the end. You knew he was going to use it as a weapon at one point.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it's good telegraphing though, isn't it? Like
yeah.
the way his hand sort of swings up to the screen and does it. Like back then, when you were a kid, you're just like watching it, but now you sort of think telegraph.
Yeah. And another thing I liked is, at the end, I didn't, between RoboCop and RoboCop 2, you don't know what's happened to Lewis when he goes, "We'll fix you." They'll fix you. They fix everything.
Yeah.
He says to Lewis. And does she live? Do they turn her into a female RoboCop? You don't know until you see her as being repaired.
Yeah, I mean that was one of the original plots for RoboCop 2 that they posed, that Lewis is turned into another RoboCop because of her injuries at the end of the first one. But obviously, what we got, wasn't it?
Yeah. With RoboCop 2 with Irving Kershner attached to it, you expected greatness.
Yeah, that was his last film, I think, as well, wasn't it?
I'm soon find out.
Or last studio film, I think. I think he retired. He's quite an old fellow, wasn't he?
Yeah.
When was RoboCop 2? Was it 1990?
1990, 12th of October, 1990. So that would have been the day I saw it at the cinema.
Wow.
Yeah, it was. He did an episode of Sequest DSV after that in '93.
Oh God, I remember that.
Yeah, I actually went day of release to see RoboCop 2, which we were here. Let's find out when RoboCop 3 got its UK release, because I did see that. I saw it on the day.
I think it was 93, wasn't it? 94, maybe.
Let's find out. RoboCop 3, 1993.
Although it was actually made in 91.
Yeah, and it came out June 24th, 1994. It was already in Fangoria magazine, and all those magazines are already hyping it up before the plug was pulled on it.
I think that's the problem with RoboCop 3. It's like, by the time it had come out, it was technically a 2-year-old film because it's been shelved. So the effects look late 80s instead of contemporary when it was released. I always thought when I was a kid, like the jetpack stuff looked so dodgy.
It did.
And like maybe it wouldn't have if it was released when it was supposed to be released. I don't know.
At the time, it looked good. I was very pro RoboCop because I used to collect the comics.
Yeah, I used to read the comics.
I'm going to a little gratuitous post. We can find us on Instagram. I'm going to as soon as we're up on all the platforms. I'll post some pictures of a few of the comic books.
Yes, which I have seen, and it is amazing to see. Like all of Steve's stuff is pristine.
Thank you, because it's you got to remember I'm from the generation of the Brody Bruce. Touch less than you be touched. I taught you how to handle comic books, which is another thing we'll do for another podcast. Fanboys versus Morats.
Oh yes.
So I like as a kid. I know we're going a little bit off track of the whole. Is it the ultimate '80s movie? But I do want to point out. I like the way that when the what was it? I made a reference in here because I got notes. It's kind of funny because I was vowed that I was just going to enjoy the movie, but I couldn't help making notes. So directive. You see when you see RoboCop's face first. His eye through the visor when the visor cracks before before they take his visor off. So you can actually see it is Murphy, but the scene where you see the eye that's humanizes RoboCop because they say the eyes are the windows to the soul. So there's a lot of thought being put into RoboCop, more than just action movie. But you got the the ending, the bit where it is at that industrial plant. That is so 80s as well.
Yeah, it's like it was a real abandoned steel mill as well. So I think it really reminds me of something like Mad Max, or even the scene in Tim Burton's Batman where the Joker is made into the Joker. You always got that sort of abandoned factory shootout scene, didn't you, in the 80s films?
they were cool, and it's the sheen on the film when they did it is screams 1980s.
Yeah.
But yeah. You do need an abandoned factory. They even do it RoboCop 2 with when RoboCop's being dismantled by Kane. And
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah, they do. Yeah, and I think the Resistance hides in one in RoboCop 3, don't they? Yeah, it's just like a sort of staple. I think it's because there's lots of things you can hide behind for like the action, like for the shootouts and stuff like that.
pre-made film sets.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. Don't have to
Shave a
pay
bit
for
off the
them.
budget, but so I was just say,
What about like Reaganism? Think that dates it, or sort of, like the sort of uber capitalist 80s thing?
what do you mean? Like we're not going through it now with Trump and
Yeah,
Boris
that
Johnson?
was
I'm sorry.
that was my sarcastic outlook I was going for.
Yeah, Trump and Boris Johnson. Let's open everything up because businesses are failing. It doesn't matter about the humans.
Yeah, OCP right there, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And with all the stuff that's been, yeah, yeah. History has a tendency to repeat itself.
Yeah, definitely.
And,
I mean, we haven't reached robot cops yet, but I dare say one day.
yeah, but people being laid off by
Yeah,
because they've automated automated lines.
yeah, yeah. I mean, even something like like the gentrification in RoboCop 3, where they're sort of pushing out homeless people, pushing out people out their homes to
Yeah.
build high rises and condos. Like as much as that is a weak film, it does have a better sort of background story than RoboCop 2, I would argue,
Yeah,
which is basically just a bigger robot when RoboCop starts a fight kind of thing.
yeah, they have a designer drug called Nuke. At least
Yeah,
RoboCop has coke. So that is the
yeah,
ultimate 80s because of that alone. Is that they actually, rather than inventing a drug, they just go, yeah, well,
yeah.
what were
Coke
all
will
the
still be
rocks?
big.
What were they all do? What was Hollywood doing? Coke. What was so? Yeah, so it's like, yeah,
Literally everyone is sniffing coke in this film, aren't they? Like
yeah,
it's and probably the only thing that does date it actually, like in a funny way, not in a sort of bad way. It's just where you go, oh, it's such an 80s thing, coke, isn't it? It's in
yeah.
like every plot of every 80s action film.
But that was, you know, I don't do drugs, never have done drugs, never will do drugs,
No, same.
and it was when I found out that this, that coke was rife, as was a few years ago. You know what my first question was? It was like, how do people afford it? And it had to be explained to me that it's the streets are being flooded. It's cheap now because I
Yeah,
always remember from the likes of RoboCop and Lethal Weapon that 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 coke, and you've always seen with the rock stars that was their drug of choice. So it was always an
yeah,
expensive drug. So
and businessmen.
yeah, exactly, which goes back to RoboCop.
Yeah,
And yeah, so that was, and the clothing the hooker's wearing.
yeah,
That is so 80s. But yeah, yeah, you have got the decadence of the 80s. But yeah, I'm going through my notes. There's the bitches leave. I love that line reading.
I there's a funny story about that. Well, actually, apparently, because I think it was Paul Verhoeven's second English language feature after he did a film called Flesh and Blood in 1986, I think, with Rutger Hauer, and it wasn't very popular, but it was Orion as well, so I think that's the reason it got ripped off. But because his English wasn't 100% at that point, he was referring to those two women in that scene as bitches in real life. So he'd be like, "You're bitch number one and you're bitch number two."
Ooh.
And I can just imagine, like, if you've ever seen him on interviews, he's really sort of hyperactive, isn't he?
Yeah.
And I can imagine him like shouting like "bitch one and two" for him. But I mean, this like really established what he could do
Yeah.
in Hollywood as well, and He still is one of my favorite actors.
The only films I've really seen of Verhoeven is RoboCop and Total Recall and Starship Troopers and Showgirls.
And sure.
Yeah, if I didn't watch Showgirls, Showgirls came out in 95, 96. Let me just pull it.
Yeah, I think it was. I remember seeing that was massively marketed.
Say that again, sorry?
I remember seeing when it came out, those posters for it
Yeah.
quite all over the place. You know, consider it like an adult, was pretty much an adult.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, 95, Jesus. I just don't like the sex scenes in it. I thought the sex scene and the rape scene were filmed pretty much too similar. So that film was a major turn off.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably the difference between why something like that failed and something like 50 Shades succeeded, isn't it? Because one of them's done as a romantic sort of, romantic in quote marks, erotic film, whereas Showgirls is kind of, it's murky, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's like, it's about the low, poor side of it all. And, I always thought it had the makings of a really good film. But yeah, like you say, the scenes where it's like they're making rape seem titillating, I'm not really, I really throws me out of, I don't like rape scenes as it is, or even implied rape scenes in films. But if they're necessary to the story, then you need them. But I know what you mean, like it sexualizes them, doesn't it? A bit too much.
50 Shades, no.
Yeah.
Gross.
Ironically, I think Showgirls feels like it.
Yeah, what with the colours palette, yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, he does have like even Starship Troopers. Like I always think the later films still feel like they're in the 80s.
Starship Troopers.
I
see that with
in
Starship
a complimentary way.
Yeah, I saw that when I was at the cinema. When I was at the university.
I'd love to have seen that cinema.
It was good. 97? Was it 97? Was it 97?
It was nice. Because I remember seeing posters for it in like the bus shelters, where we live here.
Yeah.
And I think it was 15 originally, if I'm not mistaken, and then they changed it to an 18.
Oh, right.
Because I remember seeing the trailers and it said 15, and then I thought, that's not 15, is it?
It was, it's a 15, jeez.
Oh, it is? I thought it was an 18.
According to IMDb.
Unless it's been sort of like they did with Terminator, where they take some of the certificates down.
It came out in January in UK. January, I didn't pull back up on the screen. USA November the 7th, UK January 2nd, 1998. I was in my third year at uni. So I actually remember going to see it. I saw it at the Odeon in Luton.
Wow.
And let's see what certificate it says here. I try to do this. I don't want to press the wrong button and find out we're getting infringed for copyrights. Let's have a look. Okay. Starship Troopers is so close to Super Troopers. So
it is, yeah.
It just has 123 minutes. It doesn't have the actual rating. I suppose that's one way of getting around it if you've got a good password. And you're too young.
I'm sure it did change anyway. I remember the first time I saw it, my mum and dad rented it, and my mum was sort of like, "I'm not watching this. The film's too gory and all this." Like, so that intrigued me. So I sat down with my dad for the rest of it, and I'm pretty sure it was an 18 on the video.
That would not surprise me because it was pretty gruesome.
It is quite gory, yeah. But even then, I did pick up on the sort of, the funny side of it, because it's just a take of fascism, isn't it?
Yeah.
And ironically, I think Starship Troopers probably, as good as great as it is, it's probably dated more than RoboCop.
Yeah.
Because it's further in the future. RoboCop's only the near future, isn't it? It doesn't give you a year or anything.
That's so quotable. Hoo-ha!
It is. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And the bit, "Do you get me? We get you, sir." I love that. Or is it
Yeah, that's
Rich Guys
weird.
Roughnecks?
RoboCop's not massively quotable, is it? There's a couple of quotes, like "Dead or Alive, You Come With Me" and stuff like that. But it's not like it wasn't. A lot of '80s films did rely on their quotes, didn't they? And it's one of them that sort of did it off its own back, in my opinion. There aren't many quotes you can quote apart from that and "I'd buy that for $1."
Bitches, please. Nice
Bitches,
shooting
leave,
sun. Nice shooting sun. What's your name, Murphy?
Murphy, yeah. That is a great ending.
Yeah, oh, perfect. When he just walks off. But I'm going into a territory now where it's as is the stuff that I find quotable. Is it because you've watched it so many times, or is it because it's out there? But I think it's because I watched this when that RoboCop came out on video. I watched that so many times. I mean, so many times that did live in the video recorder.
Yeah, I think I wore mine out.
Yeah. I know I hate them.
I'd love to know what trailers were on it as well. But I mean, it must have been trailers that came out the year the video was released, not the film.
Yeah, it was what the film they were trying to promote for what the studio was.
Yeah. Do you know as well? Interestingly, we were on about how great the posters and the artwork was for '80s, especially horrors and science fiction films. In such a way that sometimes the artwork was promising things that don't even happen, and they sold it on that. I think RoboCop, as much as it's a good sort of front cover, it is one of those like boring Photoshop ones. I love the Arrow one because it's sort of like a painted.
Yeah, I had that. It got binned. I know because things get tatty and get old. I had RoboCop on my wall as a kid. That poster,
oh yeah, so did I.
Kind of regret.
The one where he's getting out the car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. It's brilliant. It's just come on. I've pulled the picture up on the screen right now. It's
the slogan as well. Is it not like half machine, half man, all cop or something like that?
Yeah, you got it.
Or the future of law enforcement.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I wish I had that poster. I wish I had that poster now. I really do. It was without the blurb at the bottom. It was just RoboCop, a picture of RoboCop getting out the car.
And you get a poster of the Arrow one. I think it's the original. It's a double-sided.
Oh, I'm gonna have to look. I haven't actually opened the box up. I got the boss.
I think one side is the front cover you get, and then the other side is the original poster.
Yeah, Charlotte's actually said the post. She's actually messaged me saying the poster's in the box.
Yeah, it is.
So, yeah.
See, we should listen to our partners.
Yeah, I'm actually pulling up the videos. If you go on IMDb, little thing for you. So if you go on IMDb and go to the images, you actually have the original VHSs and a load of posters on the images. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
And the video games.
I as well. I don't know if maybe discuss the direct cut briefly. Like, when was the first time you saw that?
Yes, I actually can't answer that one because I'd like to see. I think I've seen it before. Has it ever been on any streaming platforms or anything other than? Because
I think Netflix has I think it's sort of like the standard version now. After like what Ridley Scott does, where he picks a version as the definitive, not to a George Lucas extent where you can never fucking watch the original again, but I think the first time I ever watched it was when they released the trilogy on DVD.
Yeah,
and then as far as I can see, though, it's only extra gore. I don't think it's like massively exposition based. Just shots of like that fella at the beginning getting killed by a and Murphy's hand exploded more and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's just the extra gore. You're right. It was the DVD release.
Yeah, 2003 that one.
Yeah, so that.
I remember buying that.
I've got it somewhere, but it's yeah. But it's not about it. To me, it's not about the extra features. I mean, it's about the actual. It's about the film itself.
Yeah.
I mean, they just added.
Although the features are great.
Yeah. Yeah, the boss has just got out the lobby cards from RoboCop.
Oh yeah, they're good on.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna have to scan them into the computer.
Yeah, they are good.
So, yeah, that's another thing that I miss. I miss 80s lobby cards. I miss the
Yeah,
promotions.
press kits as well.
Yeah, I do. It's. We don't get this anymore because everything that goes onto the big screen, everything that's we get now, that's not streaming services,
Yeah,
is or straight to DVD, which it seems to be straight to DVD or digital
yeah,
is all the and
like the raids,
yeah,
isn't
it's
it?
I I don't like it because there's no art, there's no society. Where as a consumer, we are missing out on all the good stuff.
Yes, and it's sort of sterile as well, isn't it? Like it's just delivered to your account on this date. Like
Yeah,
I used to love it. The whole hunt for films is over now, isn't it? Like I mean, unless you go HMV and get the deals and stuff. I used to love like waiting for a release date and going in and buying that film.
yeah,
And even I've fallen for the whole just get it on digital, it's easier. But that's mainly because as well, I think the big studios do awful releases.
yeah.
Like they just can't. The special features are shit on a lot of them.
I because I went all the way through uh, uh, to uh, to HMV. Like there was one just over 8 miles away from us, so I went all the way through over because they had an exclusive copy on Blu-ray, Blinded by the Light, and I
Oh
bought it
yeah,
on the same day. I think I bought it on the same day as because it came out I think the same day if I'm right as Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and because I was one of the first customers, they gave away a free poster for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood on Blu-ray. So I got the Once Upon a Time in
yeah,
Hollywood poster. So you want a free poster? I'm like, okay. So I miss things. I do love going on, but when you're in HMV and you're looking and you go, is there anything else you're looking for? And you go, yeah. And you change your mind. You go, yeah. So and I love going in there, finding stuff I want, and picking up something else because I went in for what was the cover book last film I went in for before this was before lockdown, and they and I'm looking around because I saw Star Trek 2 director's cut, and I thought I'll get it when I've got a bit of money. So when I had a bit of money, I couldn't see it, so they wouldn't and got me it, and I love doing that. I love going in and getting films or just seeing something that you want and just being able to pick it up, then
yeah.
see something else that you think I'd like that, or rummaging
It's
through
more
the bins.
personal.
Yeah,
It's way
rummaging.
more personal.
Oh yeah, and when you rummage through the film bins and just picking up something you think you'll like.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. Or like something that's a bit more expensive than you're going to pay, and you think, I should just get it anyway. No, can't, can't.
I can't justify paying that money for that.
But I want it.
Yeah, I'm having it.
Yeah.
I'm having it. I'm having it. And yeah. No, I know what it was. I can see it there. It was Doctor Sleep. I went all the way over for Doctor Sleep,
Oh yeah.
and I ended up walking out with Doctor Sleep and Star Trek 2 Director's Cut.
Good
So
choice.
yeah, I haven't seen the Star Trek 2 Director's Cut yet because I'm gonna wait till we finish watching the others.
I haven't seen that for years.
Well, Star Trek 2 or the Director's Cut.
No, the director's cut. It was when they did the 2 disc DVDs of all the films. It was included on there, but it's not on the Blu-ray box set.
That's
So I haven't seen it since the DVD.
uh, we'll have to do a film night of that one and we'll discuss.
Yeah, I think it's again. I think it's one that's like 4 or 5 minutes longer, but it's just like extra sort of scenes that will cut out the pacing and stuff like that.
So they just put it back in to sell more copies.
I think so, but it's stuff that works better on home release. So you have the extra time to sit down and watch it when you're at home, don't you?
Oh, yeah.
What do you think about RoboCop Returns?
Oh, the new one.
Yeah.
If they pull it off right, who they got to? Who's attached?
Directing,
Yeah.
it was Neil Blomkamp, but I think it's a guy called Abe something. He's the guy that directed Little Monsters. There's a film on Now TV with Lupita Nyong'o. It's like a zombie film.
I heard it. Oh, that's one I want to watch.
It's very good. It's quite funny. It's an Australian film, but he's a good enough director. But the only thing that's worrying me is they keep changing directors and flip flopping on who's directing it. I would have loved Neil Blomkamp because I mean his visual style was unreal, especially when it comes to, if you've seen Chappie,
Never seen that one.
where he deals with a robot as a main character. He's just fantastic, and he handles the gore
Yeah.
perfectly as well. He's like a protege of Peter Jackson. So,
Wasn't he? Wasn't he?
yeah, he did like District 9 and Elysium and all that.
I saw District 9, but wasn't he attached
Yeah.
to the sequel to
Alien.
Aliens?
Yeah,
So,
but I mean, don't mistake him being taken off those projects for meaning he's not good, because he's a fantastic, like, visual. He's got great visual flow.
yeah.
But I mean, if they, like you say, if they do it correctly, I think the best way to do it is like they've done with Halloween, where you ignore the others and you set it just after the first one.
Oh yes.
I think that could work.
That Halloween, I'm gonna kiss its ass again. That Halloween that's a major reboot onto the genre. That was to me.
Yeah, I mean, it started that sort of. I think that trend's going to continue with a lot of sequels now, where they just sort of go, "Oh, ignore the last ones." I think Terminator's done it for the last 2 films.
Let's not talk about
Badly.
that. Terminator. If there's only one time in the cinema I'd like to say I want my money back, and that was The Dark Fate.
Oh, really? I've still not seen it.
Don't bother. It's actually, yeah, watch it. We'll do a podcast on it. It's terrible.
On my first impressions.
Yeah, I want my money back. I did.
I think what's ironic is that Terminator's considered like probably the biggest. I don't know, maybe probably the biggest science fiction action sort of franchise outside of Star Wars, and yet I think RoboCop holds up so much better.
It does.
I mean, Terminator 1's amazing. Like, we both agreed it's the best, haven't we? But because T2 has this massive following, I think everyone always sort of mistakes it for, oh, it's the best sci-fi action film. Well, it's really not.
No. I like Terminator.
Yeah,
That's
I
it.
do. I'm not bashing it.
I just like Terminator. I don't.
Yeah.
Terminator 2, alright. Terminator 3. No, yeah, I like the original. But they could never do a good sequel to the others. They changed the dynamic, and I didn't like it. I just like having Arnie as the unstoppable machine. Although, what's it called? The one with Matt Smith in, the one where they changed Amelia Clark. That was actually
Genesis.
Genesis, yeah. Terminator and Genesis. So I like those two.
I didn't mind Genesis. I thought it was a bit like a greatest hits, wasn't it? But I mean, Jurassic World did that as well, and that made millions.
Jurassic World, we just watched it on the big screen the other day. That's bloody brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah, you maybe want to get hold of Terminator Genesis. I'm going to look how much and get it for on Google Play.
Interestingly, I think that's the only thing they could do with the sequel to Terminator now is set it just after the first one, so Arnie could do bad again.
Yeah.
Or just finally give us a future war film that we've been asking for years.
Or give it another couple of years, they try and reboot it. So that's one.
Yeah, because I mean, I think it's kind of Batman and Robin itself now, hasn't it?
Yeah, big time. $5.99 if you want to buy. If anyone's interested in buying it from Google Play in the UK, it's $5.99 for Terminator Genesis.
Wow, never thought you'd see a Terminator film.
And you got Terminator, which is $7.99. See how much I can get the RoboCop for. RoboCop is one of those films that to get digitally would be pretty. It's. Let's have a look. What annoys me about digital films is that you don't get extra features.
Yeah, or they're at the end if they are in there.
Pardon?
Or they're like on Amazon Prime, you can get them on the video service.
Yeah.
You can get films with features, but they're right at the end of the film, stuck together, one after the other, so you can't. Like, the thing about features you like is being able to, if it's boring, you go back to the menu and choose another one, don't you?
Definitely. So, we'll wrap this up by just saying, is RoboCop the ultimate 80s movie?
I think as a culmination of that decade, yeah, sure, it's like for me, it's like the 80s summed up, because it was always like, it was one of the first sort of, I don't know, it sounds weird, but it was one of the first 80s films I've watched as a kid, because like you say, it's a robot cop. and he's got a gun that like he spins around and puts in his leg. Like how much? And there's a big, massive robot that's after him as well. I think that's a culmination of all those great 80s, tropes. You've got the cop drama, and you've got. I mean, it's kind of a buddy cop as well because he's got loads with him. And you've got like menacing villains, good one-liners. Yeah, I think it. I would say, I would argue it is.
Definitely for the later half of the 1980s. You just mentioned about
Yeah,
the buddy cop element of it, which was coming into play as well at that time with the likes
yeah,
of Lethal Weapon, Die Hard, and even Rambo: First Blood Part Two.
yeah,
The look of it is starting to lighten itself up, so it's leading itself now into what would come in terms of science fiction was dark, with the like of Alien and
yeah,
Terminator, just to name the two, and it's starting to get lighter. It is, which would take us into the 90s, where science fiction goes a lot lighter. And even if you look at because 86, if I'm right, was when science fiction came back to TV with Star Trek: The Next Generation. So, but in terms of construction, in terms of the way that the studios were handling it, the way studios were making money, and the way that the audiences were going, it is the ultimate 80s movie because it was all those things, and especially everything you've said. So
yeah,
yeah, I agree that it is, especially for the science fiction genre, it is the ultimate 80s movie.
yeah. I mean, before I used to sort of think maybe something like Back to the Future was like the definitive 80s film, but I think that's more, like Back to the Future plays with nostalgia, doesn't it?
Yes.
So that's that's the ultimate thing you remember that film for, like, is how nostalgic it is. But yeah, I think RoboCop sort of sums up the 80s more for me than anything, because I do consider 87 the end of the 80s, if I'm honest.
I think we're going to have that one for another discussion
We could,
soon.
yeah,
We will. So that is coming soon. You know, I can't say any more. I'm Stevie
yeah.
W.
And Callum,
See you soon.
see you later, guys.